Into our modern society, you can get pretty much anything you want if you know how to influence the right people. As Tony Robbins said, in the earliest times, power was simply the result of physiology. As a civilization developed, power resulted from heritage. Then in the industrial age, capital was power, but in this current society, those with the information and the means to communicate it to the masses have what the kings used to have, i.e. unlimited power. It is not about what you say as much as it is about how you say it that make people believe and trust you. And in this video we will see how a set of simple hypnotic principles can influence even the most resistant mind to convince them that you are right and that they can act according to your desires. Number 1, always translate your outcome into a state. Basically, decisions and actions happen within states. And by state, we mean emotional state, like joy, like peaceful, like enthusiast. When you can trigger the right state, you can trigger the right action or the right behavior from the subject you want to influence. As a simple example, you might notice when you first meet somebody, in which kind of state do you think they are? Do you think they are uninterested? Do you think they are bored? Do you think they are enthusiastic to meet you? Because when you alter right from the beginning the way you talk and the way you speak to match the state they are into, you might influence somebody without doing much, just because you matched the right emotional state at the moment they were in that state. There was a great example of that in an old movie about a coach using neuro-linguistic programming into a company, and he had to motivate a whole team to work on a project to help one person, and you can see him approaching each of the employees with a different behavior that is matching their values, their way of speaking, their taste in communication, and their criteria for what they like and how they like to hear messages. He just matched all of them one by one, and at the end all of them are motivated to work for the one he was helping because he just met them where they were. And the trickier thing about altering states, though, is to figure out that if the person is too far away from the state you would like them to be into, then you have to go through some intermediate state. When somebody is very aggressive, very sad eventually, and you want to get them attentive with some peace of mind and really joyful, that might be just too far away in the polarities of emotional responses compared to where they are. In those cases, what hypnotists do all the time is break the state, interrupting the state, traditionally through some hypnotic induction, but that can be done through a conversation by talking about something else that will just make them think about other things. Or you might just use confusion, slightly more technical, using some confusing topic of conversation to make them lose their train of thoughts, and then they are like, what are you talking about? And there you can influence them into a more positive state. Just use anything intermediate compared to where they are to break that state and get them more easily toward the positive state you want them to be into. Principle number 2, you have to learn the 4 doors of access to the mind. We might identify a few more, but I just reduced the list to 4 here for simplicity, for increased simplicity. The first one is memory. When you ask somebody, some subject, to remember something positive, obviously the more they describe that experience, the more they will get back into the emotional state they were at the moment they lived that experience. In the same way, if you want to get somebody in a negative state, like some politicians do all day long to infuriate people even more about the enemies and vote for them, then you might ask people to remember how those immigrants just stole jobs from you or people you know. Obviously, those questions just get people more irritated about the one thing you want them to be irritated about. Remember, hypnotic influence is not always about getting people to feel good. It is what happens in the therapeutic context, but in politics, for example, it is mostly used to get people infuriated against the enemies so that the one candidate who has infuriated the masses the most can get more votes for him or her. The second door of access might be similar to some extent. It is to use stories. Whenever you use a story, when you start the story, the conscious mind of the person listening to the story has only one obsession: figuring out where are you going with this? What is the end of the story? If I start telling you about this one hypnotist I met when I was 5 years old that completely changed and blew my mind, then the only focus, intense focus you have right now is, okay, and what happened with that hypnotist? And that's not even a real story, it's just popped up out of my head right now. It is just something that will get you more focused on what I say, and the more focused you are on what I say, the less you are caught up into your own trail of thoughts that could be negating my message. Whereas if you give me your full attention, then anything I say will get more easily into your unconscious mind, because there is no more resistance between my mind and your mind, or my message and your mind. Number 3, trickier for those who don't know about NLP, describing the process with the VAK terminology. Basically, to simplify the whole thing, if I want to make you feel great right now, those words, feel great, might not be enough for you. But if I tell you about how when I first met, linked with a story, how when I first met that person who really made me have a great day, I met that person and I felt right away some electric jolt inside my chest. Because I looked into her eyes and she was smiling. And the more she was smiling, the more I was feeling almost nervous, but also empathetic enough to be eager to meet her and to know more about her. There you are getting led more and more into the state I want you to be into, because I am using visual, kinesthetic, and eventually auditory signals. If I talk about the softening voice she had when she talked to me and whispered in my ear, if I use visual, auditory, and kinesthetic descriptions to describe the state I want you to be into, you are going to experience that at some point, provided we have some rapport, at some point you are going to get in that state just with my basic descriptions. So breaking down a state into a series of commands with the VAK language, or VAKOG, NLP terms, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, breaking down a state in that sense can help you enrich your vocabulary whenever you want to lead people's minds and get them in the state you want them to be into. And number 4 is simply visualization. Whenever you visualize by doing meditation on your own, or you do some self-hypnosis, or you listen to some binaural beats, obviously you are getting yourself in a trance state one step at a time, because you visualize intensely some great things. Even the dream state might be related to this. The more you visualize, the more you get into some altered state of consciousness. So getting somebody to visualize something, which might happen through any of the other tools we have enumerated here, that person will get more and more into an altered state where you can plant commands and condition their mind to act upon what you want through doing this. Out of those 4 methods, memory, story, VAK language, or visualization, out of those 4, the insight to figure out which one to use is pretty simple. Start by the one that is the easiest for you. Never try to start by something overly confusing for you. Start by the one that seems intuitive. Telling stories. Yeah, I tell stories to my little sister. She's 8 years old. She likes to hear stories when she's going to bed at night. Okay, you are used to tell stories. Then use the stories to influence others. Start where you are. Start by what you can already do and build up from there with more skill set. If you want to figure out, by the way, a complete process for where to start and how to accelerate your skills and get more challenges that will develop your skill set into covert hypnosis, you have a small series of challenges, of 5 challenges down below, easy ones. You can just complete them one by one, and they will get you into action to hypnotize people conversationally through simple actions. It is down below, and with that in mind, let's proceed with the principle of hypnotic influence number 3, which is none other than voice, your vocal tonality, and how you might use your voice to influence the thoughts of somebody listening to you with some attention. At the most fundamental level, your vocal expression is simply a consequence of your emotional state Once again, the state you are into, if you are tired versus if you are excited and ecstatic about your day, those states will influence your vocal tonality and even your whole behavior with your whole body. Everything is influenced by the state you feel. So if your voice is uninteresting and nobody wants to listen to you, maybe first notice which level of energy you are into. Maybe do some push-ups in the morning before going into your day. Just do something to activate your physiology. Then for the intricate things about how tonalities can alter the perception of truth into a message, you can say the exact same thing on two different tonalities and receive a completely different reaction from your listener. For example, whenever we use a downward tonality, it is presupposing a fact instead of a question, and it is presupposing a fact instead of an argument. So if we disagree, you and I, about which politician should be in power, then obviously if I tell you, but I told you this politician was the real deal, you never listened to me, in that behavior and rushed out voice, you're just compelled to argue against me. But if I tell you with a lot of calmness that obviously I told you this politician was the best option for three simple reasons, and I am going to enumerate what those three reasons are. Right there, you have less room to argue against me because I did not presuppose it was an argument. I presupposed through my tonality that I was simply enumerating facts. Whether you want to listen to them or not is your problem. I just enumerate what I know is the truth. With that intent in mind, my voice is going to be completely different than if in the back of my mind I am just trying to prove something to you and you may not even want to listen in that case. Another big trick I used quite many times to get people to agree with me is instead of arguing, I took the voice of disappointment. Because I tried so many things and I wish I could tell you, but I can't, and it is so hard for me. And I just realized it was difficult. And with that tonality, people are just compelled to be empathetic and realize that, yes, I am going through some hard times. And particularly, there are two people I won't mention that I have highly manipulated with that technique quite a few times, to say the least. I just took that voice to reduce conflict and get into agreement, even when the thing I wanted to convince them about was not in their best interest at all, but who can influence the most is the one who gets the most out of life. And when people are less advanced on the scale of communication, well, it's not my problem. They just have to study how that works. I might be manipulated by other people who know more about life than I do. Then I just call that the chain of evolution. People who are more advanced in persuasion get more out of life anyway. Number 4, when we get into the more difficult parts of persuasion and hypnotic influence, resistance is only a protection. Most of you, when you are going to experiment with those tools and you are going to use many of them in your daily life pretty soon, you are going to encounter some people who don't really respond positively to what you say because they have different political views, because they have different opinions, because they have different life experiences that prove to them they were right and you were wrong, whatever. And with those people, you just have to understand that when they resist your message, it is never an attack against you, it is simply a protection. They are protecting themselves, and most of the time they are protecting their trauma. When somebody has been traumatized by some heavily negative experience, they just don't want anyone to talk about this if they haven't initiated the talking about it. Unless they talk to a therapist, people usually don't want others to see their wounds, their trauma, all the things they suffered from. So when you can catch the trauma where it is and soften it, talk gently to that part of themselves so that they feel reassured and that you empathize with all the pain they lived, and you only talk about their situation, because whenever people complain or resist, they just talk about themselves. Even if they complain about some abstract philosophical concept, they just talk about themselves. So when you can take into consideration that amount of subjectivity and talk to their wounded parts and their trauma, then you may soften the conflict enough to get them to agree with you, no matter what the topic of discussion is. And finally, number 5, which is a more general understanding, learn at least one model of the mind. When I notice how many things I can drift into a conversation, in how many ways can I lead people's minds in different tonalities, in different examples, I just realize I have a lot of general understanding of how human beings work. Whenever somebody is resistant, whenever somebody is having some conflict, I don't really listen to the words they say, I listen to okay, what's happening in the back of their head that initiated that kind of response against me or the person they are in conflict with? And for that, the main model of the mind I keep getting back to is nothing more than emotions. I just come back to, okay, that person who is in a negative state, what kind of state are they into? Are they feeling angry? Are they feeling sad? Are they feeling guilty, maybe? And two books drastically helped me to figure out how humans work in that instance. It is Letting Go by David Hawkins, which extensively talk about emotions and why some emotions happen more than others, how do they arise, and in which situations are they the most likely to arise, and Emotions Revealed by Paul Ekman, which is giving a massive overview of everything you have to know for how people and why people feel a certain way at certain times. Another big one I might mention is the Enneagram model, the only personality test I would recommend. I don't really like the other ones, but this one to me is really congruent and you can fit pretty much all the people you meet on that model and figure out therefore what do they really want, how do they like to be talked to, and you can adapt your conversation based on where they fit on the model. Use that one if that helps you. I am not a big fan therefore of all the MBTI, the Myers-Briggs, the Big Five and all those tests, simply because I never fit correctly into any of those categories on those tests. I passed many of them during college and every time the researchers were confused with me because they realized that my profile was not fitting anywhere. Then obviously I know I am a particular profile. Maybe the people you meet every day just fit in those categories of the Big Five, of the MBTI, whatever. So use any model of the mind that seems congruent for you, either emotions, either personality test, just one thing you can use to figure out how should I play this person. Should I play them more aggressively? Should I play them more on the defensive? Should I talk softly? Should I talk more assertively? Any psychological profile you are interested in learning, definitely devote some hours to figure out how it works so that the next time you meet somebody, you can right away put them, not in a box, but you can get them closer to a category you know how to deal with. And then through time, what happened in my case over 10 years, whenever I meet somebody who does not fit anywhere, okay, I just open a new case in my mind. Okay, that profile of person, the profile of person, for example, who run a big company, that person has different challenges than the 25-year-old girl I want to get into bed tonight. Those two have different problems. I don't play them the same way at all if I want to influence them. You just have different ways of influencing somebody based on their type of personality, based on what they like and based on their life experiences. Soldiers, also militaries, are a specific profile I don't deal with in the same way than many others, simply because from my experience, militaries have a massive wall inside them, between them and their emotions, because they had to put a shield to not crack under all the trauma they endured. So those people have to be dealt with differently. You just adapt based on the person and you can always get what you want out of them if you are patient enough. Now, as I have said, you have a small challenge down below, 5 missions, 5 easy steps to master covert hypnosis one step at a time. You just apply all the daily missions one at a time and you will notice your skills will definitely increase by the time you accomplish the last challenge. This is down below for those who want to check it out. Thanks a lot for watching and see you soon in the next video.